So, with the Hacker Tower cinematic trailer, there were a couple of Easter eggs that you may have seen. However, there are some things that you may have also missed in this trailer. So, firstly, yes, Cyber City is stylized in the same way as the title for Cyberpunk 77. Now, obviously, it's a coincidence that Cyber City is called Cyber City, and it's not named after Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was released after Cyber City was made for Tower Defense Simulator. Yeah, it was released on the 10th of December 2020, whereas the Cyber City map was made in 2019. However, as you can see, they're leaning into the Cyberpunk brand. Also, they have a building here called Face. Now, you'll notice that this is actually a billboard that changes into Face Your Ego, and initially, it actually shows the leak for Alter Ego. This leak here, this is the first proper leak for Alter Ego, apart from this being, I don't know, Charlie XCX's new album. But you can see Alter Ego is now canon in Tower Defense Simulator. Also, on this building here, which is actually a rounded building that's very similar to Cyber City, I mean, of course, this entire city is based on Cyber City, you'll notice a scroll up of the advertisements for Tower Defense Simulator, and you'll notice that the towers shown on this building here are probably based on the loading screen that you see in Tower Defense Simulator. In fact, you can see at the end, the commander here is this commander here, and the boots of the engineer can be seen here because you can see the gloves and it's holding something. It's this engineer here. Or it's likely actually to be the pyromancer. You can see the arm is slightly bent here, and you'll see that the arm is also slightly bent here. Next, the panning shot in the trailer shows the Molten Boss and the Fallen King, which are no longer enemies in the regular game mode. They are still enemies in hardcore mode because they use the legacy enemies, but there's also the billboard for Injured ? Now, this was a billboard made by Cherry_YW, who made this as part of the wide billboard campaign from the 7th of October 2021 to the 16th of November 2021, when these billboards were actually used in the Solar Eclipse lobby. And in fact, they are so iconic that they are actually frequently used in promotional material, including Cyber City. Well, not the map, but the trailer, yes, it's very much like that. Then, in the building that you saw previously, you can see Defend the Realms, B, A, but you can't really see what the next part is. However, it then scrolls up to the next part that we saw at the start of the video, where the commander and the pyromancer were seen nearly on top of each other in a vertical stack, and it says now. I don't know what it means by now, unless they mean like play now or something, but it just says now on a billboard, and given the fact that this is meant to be canon, we don't know what now could mean. Now, on the trailer, we can hear the dispatcher saying for the scout to go back to base and don't lose her serum. Now, it could be likely that this is reference to Professor 5 or Professor V. For those that don't know, Professor 5 is a scientist for the TDS organization and is actually a main character and has their own voice actor within the Tower Defense Simulator lore. Now, the dispatcher is voiced by Bethy VA. Professor V is voiced by someone called EMVA or MVA. I don't know how to say their name. Now, if anyone was to be doing research on a serum, I think it would be Professor V. However, trusting the scout to get your serum back, I'm not entirely sure that's a great idea. I mean, we obviously have seen the scout actually steal some money bags in the Please Donate realm. As you can see here, the scout caught as guilty. Now, of this shot, you can actually see the near full billboard that says Injured Good across the side. While for the fight scene, which has this ghoul here and the armored enemies basically laughing at the scout for doing a useless job, the Hacker Tower is seen here hacking the armored enemies to attack its fellow beings and using its clone to clone the scout into a competent version of the scout and thereby shoot the ghoul. I mean, obviously, the ghoul and the armored are actually enemies in intermediate mode, so what we're seeing is the scout being very incompetent in playing intermediate mode. Also, yes, this is the max level scout, because when you clone it, it has 2 pistols. The only level of the scout with dual pistols is max level, so why can't the scout just, shoot them? Why does it need to be cloned? Is this a reference to Alter Ego by any chance, that the scout's Alter Ego is actually a more powerful version of itself? Its ego wants to be far more powerful than it currently is right now. Now, actually, you can very briefly see the briefcase here, and you can see it's got a hazardous logo on it. You can't read it. I'm sure if I were to have a better quality version of this, I would be able to actually read it. But for now, I think it's just a standard warning sign with biohazard on it. So that's all. And now here we can actually see the full billboard with the commander and the pyromancer saying now hiring. This could be for the fact that the Below Natural is looking for Roblox combat programmers for Paradoxum Games, and if you're interested, you should email your resume and your portfolio to careers@paradoxum.gg. Paradoxum Games does appear to still be hiring. As you can see here, there's a software engineer for content still available. Now, I do not meet these requirements. I have a bachelor's degree in biology. I don't have a bachelor's degree in computer science, so I wouldn't be eligible for it. But, you know, if you want to get hired, yeah, a Cyber City trailer definitely is your method of doing it. The dispatcher then calls out saying, "Package secured, welcome to the team," inducting the Hacker Tower to the team for Tower Defense Simulator, and thereby demoting the scout for useless incompetence to relegation. I don't know. Instead of playing in the Premier League, maybe he gets to play in like League 2 with like Macclesfield Town and Carlisle United, although I think Carlisle United got relegated. But that's not all for Easter eggs for the Hacker Tower. A lot of its upgrades actually make reference to real-life computer stuff. So upgraded rig, yeah, okay, that's fine. But wire fraud, that's a reference to obviously the crime of wire fraud, which is a federal crime involving financial fraud committed with the use of electronic communications, aka doing what the hacker is by increasing your enemy cash rewards. It also has a reference to synapses. Now, in my mind, it's that little gap between brain cells where neurons connect and communicate with each other. However, in computer science, it could be a reference to the popular exploit known as Synapse X, which apparently has discontinued. I don't know. I don't know if the developers should be promoting that or if I'm jumping to too many conclusions, but that's what I think the Synapse is in reference to. Synapse could also just refer to the amount of nodes that it references, because synapses being the gap between neuron cells. If there are multiple synapses, there are multiple gaps, therefore could be reference to multiple enemies being attacked. Next, we got 5th Gen i9 3260 590327. Now, the 5th Gen i9, that's a reference to how Intel names their chips. The 5th generation being the Broadwell architecture. Although that being said, the highest core chip for the 5th generation was Core i7. We wouldn't get Core i9 until Skylake, which was the 7th generation. However, the more interesting part is actually the number after it, 3260 590327. This is where Intel puts the unique identifier for the chip. However, in this case, this is actually the place ID for Tower Defense Simulator. As you'll notice here, https://games 3260590327. The exact same number shown off here. I find that to be a very neat Easter egg. Very cool. Overclock, referencing overclocking of CPUs. And then you got rug pull, which is a very common term for your exit strategy, ending the scam. Very common nowadays with crypto scammers, so given the fact that the rug pull upgrade increases enemy cash rewards from 12.5% to 20%, but also reducing the amount of cloning from 90% down to 65%, I think is a bit apt. Now, it's fairly well known that the Triumphant Hacker skin is just a yellow recolor of the Fallen Hacker skin. However, there are some Easter eggs when it comes to the Fallen Hacker skin and the Triumphant Hacker skin. On the Fallen Hacker skin, it has what appears to be a board which has something that looks like runic languages. However, it does look like that. One of these looks like the Omega symbol. This is what the Omega symbol looks like, and you can see here that this one especially kinda looks like the Omega symbol, and the other ones look like a modified version of the Omega symbol. And interestingly, the drone that comes out of the Hacker Tower is actually something very similar to, I believe, the Fallen Engineers gun thing. Also, I don't know why when the Hacker Tower was cloning this plushy Trapper skin, it looks like this. It looks kind of weird. I assume it has something to do with the material of the Trapper skin to end up looking so weird like this, but you can't even see the brick from like certain angles. Like from this angle, it doesn't look like a spike. But you can see the Trapper fully clothed, which is not meant to be the case. It's meant to be slightly translucent, bordering on completely transparent. Meanwhile, for the default Hacker skin, you can very clearly see that Paradoxum Games wanted to impose their own brand on the phone and on the cap for the Hacker Tower. I wonder if this is the first time that the Paradoxum Games logo has appeared twice on a tower. Also, I'm now a very good appreciator of sound effects in Tower Defense Simulator. I don't know if you can hear this, but the Hacker Tower does have the foam tapping of like the fingers that you normally do on the Hacker Tower, which I don't know if it really befits the animation that the Hacker Tower has on idle, because you don't really see it tapping away at its phone. But I guess shout out to my boy Enthrallist for having these sound effects, because they sound pretty cool. The Fallen and the Triumphant skins has a different idle sound animation. It just sounds like they're glowing or whatever. But I assume that was also made by Enthrallist. Meanwhile, level 1, this is actually very close to the leak, the very first leak of the Hacker Tower all the way back in 2020. Now obviously it has changed a fair bit since this leak, but you can see the waistcoat, you can see the cap, and you can see the scarf that the default hacker at level 1 has. However, after this upgrade, you can see that these gloves, they are actually quite similar to another new tower in the game. That being for the biologist tower, not this version of the biologist tower, but the default version of the biologist tower. It has the same gloves as the hacker tower. While they're not knuckle dusters per se, they do look very metallic. But I don't know if you can hear this. But at level 5A, the top path, you can hear that the sound effects of the hacker do change. So instead of sounding like it's tapping its phone, it does kind of sound like it's tapping its watch, which it actually does here. So, you know what? Good job for Enthrallist actually coding this. Also, yes, the drone that is placed by the hacker tower here is slightly different from the leak all the way back in 2020. The leak here is that these are blue drones, whereas here it's just a completely grey drone, and in fact it has a red laser beam. Interestingly enough, though, the cost here for the hologram version of the tower is just a placement cost for the tower. It's not actually the entire cost for the tower when it's upgraded. I mean, this is a bad example because I didn't upgrade it, but if I were to clone this tower and then place it down, you'll see that the cost here is the same as the placement cost for the trapper and not the total cost that's seen here. Also, for some weird reason, the drone is collidable. I don't know why, because the developers are fixing stuff being collidable in Tower Defense Simulator. It's just that for some reason the drone, or the beam I think, is actually collidable here. Either that or something about the plushy trapper which collides with my avatar. Now, the bottom path hacker, 5B, this one actually does have a laptop which was first leaked for the hacker tower back in 2020. It also does have actually a different sound effect to the other hacker tower, which sounds like a watch, whereas this sounds like more like tapping on the keyboard. That being said though, whoever made the keyboard for this laptop, I don't think they've seen a keyboard. I'm being facetious, of course. No one's going into that much detail with such a keyboard, but I would like to actually see a QWERTY keyboard rather than a keyboard that's missing some letters.